This isn't a story about a cheating wife. This is a story about what happens to the armor when the one person you let inside decides to leave. And how they leave matters more than the fact of leaving. Sofia didn't slam a door. She picked the lock, walked out quietly, and left everything in perfect order behind her. That is so much harder to recover from than a fight. Welcome to Mr. Betrayal Stories. Drop in the comments, where are you watching from? Because this story just crossed continents. Someone in Lagos is reading this at midnight, nodding slowly. Someone in London is thinking about a person they haven't spoken to in 3 years. Someone in Dubai just forwarded this to a group chat without saying a word. Betrayal doesn't need a passport. It speaks every language, lives in every city, and it always starts with the person you least expected. Comment your city, comment your reaction, comment the one line that hit different. And if you know a Sofia, or if you've been one, you already know exactly which part of this story made you stop scrolling. Mr. Betrayal Stories. We don't write fiction, we write the truth with different names. Alexei Volkov did not become the wealthiest shipping magnate in Eastern Europe by trusting people. He had learned that lesson early, at 14, watching his own father sign over their family fishing business to a man who called himself a friend. The pen had barely dried before the man changed the locks. Alexei stood in the snow outside what had once been his father's office and made himself a promise he would carry like a scar for the rest of his life. Trust no one. He built his empire on that principle. Every contract was triple-checked by 3 separate legal teams. Every partnership was stress-tested for betrayal before it was ever signed. Every employee, from his executive directors down to the dock workers in Odessa, was quietly vetted by a private security firm he kept on permanent retainer. Alexei Volkov moved through the world like a man who expected the ground to crack beneath him at any moment, and so it never did. Until Sofia. He met her at a charity auction in St. Petersburg on a Thursday evening in late October. She was standing near a painting of a stormy sea, ironic, he would think later, given everything, wearing a simple black dress that somehow outshone every other woman in the room. She wasn't trying to be noticed. That was what noticed him about her. Most women at events like this performed. They laughed too loudly, touched arms too deliberately, smiled with the practiced precision of people who understood that beauty was a currency and these rooms were banks. Sofia simply stood, holding a glass of white wine, studying the painting as though it owed her an explanation. Alexei approached her. He was not a man of smooth words. He had always found small talk to be a form of dishonesty, so he simply stood beside her and looked at the painting too. "The waves are wrong," he said finally. She turned and looked at him, not with surprise, but with mild curiosity. "Wrong how?" "The painter has never been at sea in a real storm. The waves are too symmetrical, too romantic. Real ocean storms are chaos. They don't care how they look." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You've been in one?" "Several." She smiled, not the performed smile, something smaller and more real. "I'm Sofia. Alexei." They talked for 2 hours. She never once asked about his money. He was in love before he reached his car. They married 18 months later in a private ceremony on the coast of Montenegro. 40 guests, no press, no spectacle. Alexei had been offered a society wedding by 3 different event planners who promised him coverage in every glossy magazine from Moscow to Milan. He declined them all. Sofia had laughed when he told her, that real laugh she had, unguarded, a little ungraceful, the laugh of a woman who found the world genuinely funny rather than strategically amusing. "You really don't care what people think," she had said. "I care what you think," he replied, and he meant it in a way that frightened him slightly, because Alexei Volkov had spent 30 years ensuring that no single person's opinion had power over him. What he didn't know, what he could not have known because he had done everything right, checked everything twice, trusted his instincts and his security team and his own sharp reading of human nature, was that Sofia had a history he had never fully mapped. Not because she hid it, but because he had never thought to look at Ivan. Ivan Volkov was 4 years younger than Alexei, and in every way his opposite. Where Alexei was iron, Ivan was water, adaptable, easy, warm. He had their mother's face and their father's charm, which meant he had been forgiven for things his entire life that Alexei had always been expected to simply not do. Ivan had never built anything. He moved between business ideas like a man browsing a menu, enthusiastic, indecisive, always certain the next thing would be the one. Alexei had quietly funded 6 of Ivan's ventures over the years, not because he expected returns, but because he was the older brother, and that was what older brothers did. He had introduced Ivan to Sofia at their engagement dinner. He had watched them shake hands. He had noticed nothing. What he had not seen, what existed in the 3 years before he had met Sofia at that auction, was a different story entirely. Sofia and Ivan had met at a mutual friend's summer house in Crimea. They had spent a week in each other's orbit, swimming, drinking wine on a wooden dock as the sun went down, talking about the kinds of things people only say when they believe nothing is permanent. Ivan had fallen for her completely. Sofia had felt something, too. She would not lie to herself about that, even years later. But Ivan was Ivan, beautiful and warm and completely without direction. She had pulled back gently. He had let her go, the way Ivan always let things go, with a sigh and a sad smile and no real fight. Then she met Alexei, and Alexei was everything Ivan was not. She had chosen correctly, she told herself. She had chosen the man, not the feeling. For 11 years, she believed that. The unraveling began on a Tuesday, which is how the worst things always begin. Not on dramatic, storm-lit evenings, but on ordinary Tuesdays with nowhere to put the feeling. Yvonne had come for a weekend stay at the Volkov estate outside Geneva. Alexei was in the middle of negotiating what would become his largest contract, a $5 billion logistics deal with a South Korean conglomerate that had required 14 months of back and forth, and would, if finalized, make him the dominant force in Eastern European maritime trade for the next 2 decades. He was distracted in the way only truly driven men can be distracted, physically present, mentally elsewhere, apologizing for absences he hadn't quite noticed he was making. Yvonne arrived on Friday afternoon. Alexei greeted him at dinner, was pulled into a call by 9 p.m., and was still on it when Yvonne and Sofia sat on the terrace until past midnight, talking the way people talk when they've forgotten they're not supposed to. It happened slowly, the way all catastrophic things do when you're inside them. A week stretched into 2. Yvonne found reasons to stay, a business contact nearby, a meeting that kept rescheduling. Sofia found she was no longer counting the reasons for him to leave. She was not a woman who deceived herself. That, perhaps, was the most painful part. She knew exactly what was happening. She lay awake at 3 a.m. and looked at the ceiling and named it clearly, without flinching. I am falling back into something I chose to walk away from, and I am doing it in my husband's house. She told herself she would stop. She did not stop. It was Yvonne, surprisingly, who first said the thing that changed everything. They were in the garden, a safe enough distance from anything, just talking, always just talking, when he turned to her with that sad, clear-eyed expression she remembered from the dock in Crimea. "We wasted time," he said. "Yvonne, I'm not asking for anything, I'm not making a move. I just want to say it plainly, because I'm 38 years old, and I've learned that the things you don't say out loud follow you longer than the things you do." He looked at the mountains beyond the estate wall. "We wasted time, that's all." Sofia was quiet for a long moment. The garden smelled of lavender and cut grass, and somewhere in the distance a groundskeeper was running a lawnmower, and the sound was so ordinary it almost made her laugh. "What would you do," she said finally, "if things were different?" Yvonne looked at her. Everything differently. That was the moment. Not a kiss, not a declaration, not a dramatic scene. Just 4 words on a Tuesday afternoon in a garden in Switzerland, with a lawnmower humming in the background and the mountains watching without opinion. The planning took 4 months. Sofia was meticulous in a way that would have surprised people who thought they knew her. She had always been the warm one, the gracious hostess, the woman who remembered your children's names and your coffee order, and the anniversary of things you'd mentioned only once. But underneath that warmth was a mind that, when it decided something, moved with quiet and total precision. She consulted 3 separate lawyers in 3 different countries, Geneva, Dubai, and London, each of whom knew only one piece of the picture. She was not, she told herself, a villain in this story. She was a woman who made one life-altering choice at 31 and was now, at 42, making a correction. She would not destroy Alexei. She would take what was, by any moral measure, half of what they had built together, and she would go. The private island in the Aegean had been purchased in both their names. The restructuring of its holding company was a paperwork matter, complex but manageable. The 3 yachts registered under a Maltese maritime company were trickier, but the lawyer in Dubai had seen trickier. The 2 holding companies, one in Cyprus, one in Luxembourg, took the most time. She was patient. She waited until the South Korean negotiations entered their final, most consuming phase, the weeks when Alexei was sleeping 4 hours a night and eating at his desk and barely registering the world around him. She waited until he left for Tokyo. His phone rang at 2 a.m. Tokyo time. It was his lead lawyer, a severe and efficient Austrian named Brandt, who had worked for him for 12 years and had never once called at 2 a.m. Alexei sat up in the dark hotel room and answered with a single word: talk. Brandt talked for 11 minutes. Alexei sat perfectly still, the way he had learned to sit when the news was the kind that required all your stillness to survive. When Brandt finished, Alexei said nothing for a long moment. Through the hotel window, Tokyo glittered without sympathy. She used 3 different lawyers, Alexei said. Yes. Separate jurisdictions. Yes. A pause. How long did it take her? Brandt hesitated, sensing the weight of the question. Based on the filing dates, we estimate 4 months of preparation. 4 months. Alexei thought about the last 4 months, the negotiations, the distraction, the green tea in his carry-on, the burgundy tie. She ironed my lucky tie this morning, he said, for no reason except that the detail was sitting in his chest like a splinter and needed to come out. Brandt did not respond to this. Cancel the morning's meetings, Alexei said. I'll be on the first flight. He set the phone down and sat in the dark for a long time. He was not thinking about the island or the yachts or the holding companies. Those were problems for lawyers, and lawyers were paid to solve problems. He was thinking about a woman in a black dress standing in front of a painting of a storm and a conversation about waves and the way she had smiled with something small and real instead of performed. He was thinking about the fact that for 15 years he had trusted no one, except her, and she had not betrayed his trust carelessly or cruelly or impulsively. She had done it the way he would have done it, methodically, patiently, without a single wasted move. In another life, he thought, he might have respected that. He sat until the Tokyo dawn came through the window, gray first, then pale gold, then the full, indifferent brightness of a new day. Then Alexei Volkov stood up, straightened his lucky tie, and went to war. Some men are destroyed by betrayal. Others are simply returned to themselves, reminded of what they always knew, stripped of the one beautiful exception they had allowed. Alexei never remarried. He finalized the South Korean deal 6 weeks later, adding $4 billion to his net worth in a single quarter. He was, by every external measure, unchanged. Ivan and Sofia lived on the island for 2 years. Then Ivan grew restless, the way Ivan always did. Sofia stayed. She had learned, finally, that the storm was not the enemy. It was simply the truth about the sea, chaotic, unsymmetrical, and completely indifferent to how it looked. Just like Alexei told her, on the night they met, in front of a painting neither of them ever forgot.